It's like, okay, let's start with our personal visions and goals, and then let's align as a team. As a team, what is our vision? As a team, what does success look like for us? And let's see where the synergies are.
Hello and welcome to the Stroke It podcast. I'm Jenny Townsend, your host. Thank you for joining me. I'm so excited for you to be inspired to live your life fully, to take ownership of your time, your schedule, and your life, but most importantly, learn and grow and develop personally and professionally. Myself and others are going to share life lessons that we've learned through leadership, through heartache, through pain, through struggles, and we'll be sharing some success stories with you as well. Super eager for you to dive in, learn, and grow. And once again, just take ownership of your life today. Hello and welcome to the Stroke It podcast. Jenny Townsend, your host. Today, I am joined with Kendra Mack. She is a sought after keynote speaker, clarity strategist, and empowerment expert who transforms lives by helping professional women bridge the gap between where they are and where they want to be. With a proven track record of turning frustration into fulfillment, Kendra empowers her audience to redefine success on their own terms and take purposeful action toward their vision of a thriving life and career. Today, she's going to be sharing with us her signature path framework, talking about employee, employer, and most importantly, ourselves. You're going to want to tune in, grab a cup of coffee, turn up the volume, reduce any distractions because Kendra is here to share a lot of value. I was just watching and listening to a couple of her other podcasts and I was like, oh my gosh, she's going to be on my show. How cool is that? Kendra, welcome. I'm so grateful to have you with me today.
Jenny, thank you so much for having me. It is great to be here.
Thank you. Okay, so before we get started with the actual information that you're going to be sharing today, I always love the guests to kind of share what season of life are you in and really what brought you to this place where you're doing this amazing work.
Absolutely. So currently, the season of life that I am in, I recently relocated in the last few months. I'm back in my hometown of St. Louis, Missouri. I was living in Dallas for a little while. So going through that transition, I am, on a personal level, single, no kids, and still figuring out kind of where my landing place is going to be. I've enjoyed being back home, close to family, but still trying to figure out which city I resonate with the most. So not entirely sure that this will be my final landing place, but I was like, I'll give it some time, spend some time with family while I'm working and all of that good stuff. So I'd say that's kind of where I am right now in life.
Well, I love that. And St. Louis, like I said earlier, is a great place. Love that baseball stadium. I mean, like I said, it about killed me, but it's a great stadium for sure. Single, no kids. So my husband and I, we refer to ourselves as dinks, double income, no kids.
Yeah.
Which, some people are like, oh, that must be really nice. And other people are like, wait a minute, you don't want children? I'm like, I like fine wine. I like traveling. I love vacationing. And I love having no responsibility.
Same. I'm the same. I'm like, I like to do what I want to do, move when I like to move. My friends always ask me, like, how do you just pick up and move? I'm like, well, I don't have kids, so I don't have to worry about like schools and all that kind of things. I like to have that flexibility.
It is really nice and refreshing and super.
Mhm.
It can be very exciting at the same time. So I'm a fabulous auntie. I have several nieces and nephews, and what I love about them is I get to hang out with them. And then like after 24 hours, I'm like, okay, it's time for you to go home. And I own a child-based business, so I get lots of kids all the time.
It's like
So
we have plenty of exposure to children.
100%, and without the expense of them.
Yes.
Because they're so expensive.
They are.
So, okay, cool. So tell us a little bit about how you got into the work that you're doing today, because I really want our listeners to understand your background and your philosophy so they know what to expect to learn from you today.
Absolutely. After college, I was working a lot in just like project management roles. I felt like I was your typical kind of job hopping millennial, just trying to figure things out. And one day, I told my mom, I was like, man, I really want to talk to women about confidence. And she was like, really? I was like, yeah. I was like, I feel like confidence, is the core of our decision making. And I would just love to talk to women about confidence. So I started kind of like writing a blog and, reaching out to different women's groups. And when I found out that people actually got paid to speak, because at the time, this was just kind of a passion project on the side of my job, I started to research that. And I actually got a coach. And this was, I don't know, maybe 10, 15 years ago or so. And I got a coach And I remember specifically saying, my goal is to be a full-time speaker. And so I paid the money, probably more money than I had at the time. This is my first time investing in a coach. And I remember we got on the first little phone call after I made the payment to really like go over my goals. And I reiterated, my goal is to become a full-time speaker. And she said, no, there are a ton of broke speakers out there. I'm going to show you how to be a coach. And I was like, I mean, that's not what I signed up for. And obviously you're not going to give me a refund. So like, I felt really kind of deflated and stuck. But a part of me was like, well, maybe she's the expert, right? I paid her for her expertise. So maybe she knows. And so I did all the things. I got the funnels. I did the website. I got the scheduling, and I was booking discovery calls and booking clients. And a few months later, I was probably just as frustrated as I was with my day job as I was with this now. And I remember I was sitting on the floor in my mom's third bedroom that I was using as a makeshift office. And I was like, why is this so hard? Like, I'm not fulfilled. I'm not enjoying this. It was working, but it just didn't feel how I thought it was going to. And like this, I had this little like epiphany of this little voice dropped in my spirit, like, well, you weren't supposed to be doing this. And I was like, right. It was on my heart to be a speaker. And not only did I let someone take me off my path, I paid someone to take me off my path. So I was like, okay, that's it. And that was kind of like the impetus of me creating this framework. I didn't name it at the time. It was just kind of, I took a bunch of different goal setting philosophies, manifestation methodologies, and I kind of put it into a system that made sense for me. And it just worked so well. And I ended up coaching other people, and I kind of like pulled this in. So eventually, I named it and really solidified it. But it really came out of a time when I was just desperate to figure out what did I really want in life, and I needed help sticking to it and not letting people distract me or deter me. And so that's kind of what drove me in creating this process.
I love that you're sharing the story, and I can totally lead in and identify with everything that you're saying as well. And I think first and foremost, I think coaches are super important to hire, but it is key to hire a coach that shares the same vision or that can take you and turn your dream into reality, to where there is an ROI, where there is purpose, where you are fulfilled. And there's so many people out there coaching. So like fine tuning what your niche is and what the product is that you're going to package and sell and help people really is super, super important. And I've had several different coaches. And as you were speaking, I was like, there was a coach that I wanted to hire, and I didn't hire them because the cost and because I just didn't feel like I was ready for that. But like looking back 3 years ago, if I would have hired that coach for like my book and my podcast and my branding, I probably would be at a different stage right now too.
Absolutely.
So, and instead I hired like 3 other coaches that, specialized kind of in the same thing. So, picking a coach is super important. And I definitely want to encourage people, if they're listening today, to hire a coach or a mentor, but do your research and really kind of fine tune. And I'm sure that's what you're going to talk to about us today, which is why I'm excited to really dive into this with you, to where people can find their purpose, they can find their passion, and they can really live the life that they want to. Instead of being frustrated, they'll be completely fulfilled, which, life is too short not to be. So I'm looking forward to you sharing some of that information with us as well. So I always like to start with the love languages. That is part of the story and part of my journey. And I feel like when it comes to relationships, it's really important to understand the love languages. How experienced or knowledgeable of the love languages are you?
Fairly familiar with them. I took the love languages assessment some years ago, and I read the book years ago. And it is something I'm fairly familiar with. I think understanding your love language and the love language of others, it just plays such a role in like so many interactions. I'm pretty familiar with it.
That's awesome. So you had indicated your love languages were quality time and personal touch, which is ironic because the person I'm interviewing next, they have those same love languages as well. So I was like, ooh, both of my people today. So
yeah.
Could you give us some examples of what quality time means to you for individuals that maybe have that same love language, or maybe their partner's love language is quality time? That way they can kind of start to identify that and move towards that.
Absolutely. So for me, quality time, it's important because it resonates with me because it means you're incorporating me into your day. To me, it means you're incorporating me into your life, that we spend time together. Even the smallest thing of, hey, do you want to come run errands with me? To me, that's like you're thinking about me, you want me around, you enjoy my time, and we just get, I don't know, more time together. When you like your person, you want to spend time with them. And we get, once you're an adult, you're fairly busy. And so for me, it just means something when someone makes that time and they're like, yes, let's spend time together. Let's do things together. I want to incorporate you into my day because we all have busy schedules. And physical touch is similar, like those little touches, just like holding hands or hugging, being that sort of embrace. I think we've heard how important physical touch is just for humans in general, right? For the people who have ever experienced touch deprivation. It's just like those little moments that to me add up. You hear the phrase death by a thousand cuts. It's almost like the opposite, right? Like you get all these little micro moments of touch and time, and it really adds up to something amazing. And when you were teeing up the conversation about quality time, I remember I saw a video online of these parents. They had planned this surprise for their son, and I think he was like 5. He was fairly little. And they painted his room and they kind of gave him like this big boy room. And when he came in, he was surprised, and he was like, "You did it without me." And they were like, "Wait, what?" And everybody was saying like his love language was quality time. Like he appreciated it, but like he would have preferred like let's paint it together. And so when I think of like the difference of, some of the different love languages and how they show up, I think sometimes people can be like, "Oh, you're not appreciative." And it's like it's not that. Like, this is my love language. I just would have preferred to be a part of it with you because surely you took a significant amount of time to do this. Like, I would have just preferred to be there with you.
Right, right. 100%. 100%. Oh, I want to add on to that too. Like if you're going to gift someone like a gift certificate to coffee, if their love language is quality time, they're going to want to
Mm-hmm.
have the cup of coffee with you versus you just
Yes.
buying them a gift as well. So
Mm-hmm.
understanding that with your friends, it's not even just like with a partner, it's really with your friends and with your coworkers. We incorporate this into our company as well, understanding the love languages so that we know how to praise and show appreciation and things like that, which has played a big role in the culture of our company. So
Mm-hmm.
well, thanks for diving into that. So
Yeah.
let's get right into yourself and the importance of getting in touch with who you are and the life that you want to live, and defining what success looks like for ourselves. So I would love for you to kind of share what your philosophy is when it's about taking care of yourself, taking ownership of your life, and really leading versus being led.
Absolutely. This was somewhat of an uphill battle for me learning this because I am a recovering chronic people pleaser. So I would ask for just endless amounts of, either validation or advice, or I was very uneasy with making a lot of decisions for myself, especially decisions that kind of went against the grain. So it was kind of a battle for me to learn. And just over the years, I've learned the importance of just quieting the noise because like right now we live in the noisiest time in history. There's so much influence, and the importance of like quieting all of that and sitting with yourself to say, what is fulfilling to me? What are my strengths? What do I enjoy? If I could do anything, with money not being an object, what would it be? How do I like to add value? It's so important. And for a long time, I never asked myself that question. I always try and give grace that, the generations before us, like boomers, they may not have had the privilege of asking those questions of like, what's my purpose and what am I here for? I feel like they were given a very clear roadmap to follow, go to school, go to college, get a degree, get a job, buy a house, get married, 2.5 kids. And that's the path that they followed, and they passed that down. And so I try to give grace that, we weren't taught this, but we have so much opportunity to lean in and learn it, but we're all just trying to figure it out together. When I think about really understanding what's a successful life to me, or as you think about what's a successful life to you, I really had to dig into that because I think when we hear the word success, our mind goes to like money and houses and cars, and that's a part of it. But when I like ask the question or I work with someone like, hey, what's a successful life to you? There are 5 key areas that I want us to look at. So if you have time to think about like my successful life, that vision of maybe 10 years from now, what your life would look like for you to wake up and feel like I'm living my successful life, thinking about your overall lifestyle. So, how are you going out to eat? Are you cooking at home? Are you bowling on the weekends or a hiking on the weekends? How often do you travel? So what is like your overall lifestyle? What is your family and relationships like? What are your health and wellness, health and body goals for you to feel successful? Career and finances. So like mapping out those 5 areas and saying, what would each of these areas have to look like for me to feel like I'm living my successful life? And I broke it down into those areas because it helps us not think of success in a silo. So not just our career, and we're forgetting about that, oh, in 10 years, how old will our kids be? Or will we be caretakers of our parents? Like having a holistic view of, okay, what would every area of my life look like for me to be successful, and seeing like, do they line up? Because it's funny how often I do this activity with people. Somebody will start in one column and then look and say, oh my gosh, that actually does not align at all with the lifestyle that I want, or the kind of relationship I want to have with my kids. So thinking really holistically about my life as a whole, what would I want it to look like in all these different areas for me to be fulfilled and for me to feel like I'm living a successful life. And I think that's surprisingly challenging for a lot of people, because one, we really probably never asked ourselves that, but also we get caught up in like, well, what will people think? Is the life I want too simple? Should I want something bigger? Or am I dreaming too big and I should, humble my dreams down? And it's like, even just that process of allowing yourself to define a successful life for yourself is a huge step.
100%. So I want to mention two things on to what you're saying. Well, first of all, do you have a download, or do you have like a guided sheet where people can actually download to start developing that on your website or something?
Yes. It's not on my website, but I'll share a way to connect with me. And that's a gift that I can give for the listeners. It's my Own It mini manual, and it kind of walks you through these areas and how to map this out.
Yeah, the first time I did this was back in 2019, I think it is. I discovered this woman named Jennifer Dawn, and she developed the best planner ever. And it really is a phenomenal planner. And the beginning of the planner is there's a focus wheel, which I think is super important because I always pick a word for the year and then I go through the focus wheel. And then she had your money goal, your love goal, your give back goal, your hobby goal, your career goal. And literally, it was a whole questionnaire where it's like, what is that goal? And then how is this going to impact your life? And how is this going to make you feel? And how is this going to fulfill your future? How is this going to help your relationships? And literally, I actually went through all of those things and I got so much clarity just through that exercise. So what you're talking about is so powerful. It's almost like a guide, and it can help you make decisions, or if you're feeling lost, or if you're contemplating something. And I think that kind of helps with developing your purpose and then feeling fulfilled. So I want to encourage all listeners to get this kit that you have, because especially at this time of year, and depending on when you're listening to this, it could be at the beginning of the year, it could be mid-year, it could be at the end of the year. We're like, next year is going to be better. I think creating that time. Speaking of that, I think a lot of us are really busy, and that seems like it's going to create some time for hours, and it's not something you can really rush. So when you're speaking with your clients and the people that you're speaking to, how are you encouraging them to create the time to where they have the mindset and the space for this download?
Absolutely. Being realistic and just taking a look at your schedule. Everyone's schedule is different. So I tell people all the time, you might not have an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours to sit down and really dig into this, but maybe you spread it out. Maybe you take one of those topics and say, 30 minutes each day this week, I'm going to take some time and I'm going to think about this. Because some people like to go through the full activity in one sitting, but sometimes it's good to like start it, and come back to it with fresh eyes. So maybe you start it and you take each section per day or each section per week, and wherever you can fit it in. Maybe it's over lunch, maybe it's, 30 minutes before bed, 30 minutes less of social media or TV. Which, I mean, I can definitely use a little less of. Finding those moments where you can say, I want to take some time for me, and starting off with this activity can be so powerful, especially to your point, especially prior to goal setting. Oftentimes goals come up and sometimes people say, oh, you kind of talk about goal setting. So you talk about like SMART goals. I'm like, no, I don't talk about SMART goals. And I love SMART goals, but I feel like this is a great activity to do prior to your SMART goals. Like you said, to give you that like direction, to give you that North Star so you can align all your SMART goals in the right direction. Giving yourself this time to do this work at the front end will free up so much of your mental space as you go on with actually executing on your goals. So I always encourage people to, find the time that you can and give yourself some grace. Everyone's not going to be able to say, okay, I'm going to take an hour every day. But if you can do 15 minutes of journaling and take these questions as journal prompts and just kind of chip away at it over time, even that can be very powerful.
100%. Are you looking to enhance your relationship with yourself? If so, get the Stroke It Guide. My book is available on Amazon and on my website. Not only is my book going to help you with your personal journey with yourself, but it's also going to help you with the relationships of other stakeholders in your life. For instance, your spouse or partner, your employer, your employees, your friends, or your family members. And of course, because the title, there is a chapter for your pleasure, which is the last one, in the bedroom. The book offers lots of great tools and resources. There's a lot of great downloads, and it features many of my podcast guests, and they have thousands of downloads and resources that are worth a lot of money. So you're going to want to get my book today. You can buy that on Amazon or on my website, and you can change and take ownership of your life today with one simple click. I was fortunate enough because, like I said at the beginning of this, I'm a dink, double income, no kids. So I could get away. And I did this, back in, I think, 18 or 19. And my husband and I were going through a hard time. And I really just needed clarity to figure out, do I want to move forward with our marriage, and what does my future look like, and how do I want it to play out? And so I actually rented a house on the beach for 3 days and just went out there by myself, and took a couple days to really think about the questions and commit. And I've been doing that ever since. And I will say it's been a complete game changer for me. And I even actually have my team members do this now as well. So I love that. So how are people getting clarity? So if they're doing that, maybe you have some other ideas of how to get clarity to where they can identify what they want in those 5 areas.
I would say thinking through things that they've experienced, like past experiences. So sometimes I'll ask people, where would you like your life to be in 5 or 10 years? And they're like, I have no idea. And I always say, well, let's start with the things that really fulfill you. What are the days? And if we're talking about work or finances or family, like what are the days where you have felt the most fulfilled and the most joyful or the most excited for that day? And then on the flip side, what are the days that really drain you or have frustrated you? And let's look at what elements happened, whether it be through your job or just from your home life, and start to think through, okay, which of those pieces would you say are most fulfilling? Which of those pieces would you say, yes, I would love if I was having these interactions, these moments, these job tasks 5-10 years from now? And the things that you're like, no, I do not want to still be experiencing this in 5 years. I don't want to still be experiencing this in 10 years. I think that can be a great place to start if you have no idea, like, well, I don't know what a fulfilling, successful life would be like for me. Starting there with your past experience and your current, I think, is a great process. And there's also an activity that I love. This is not my activity. It's actually from G. Richard Shell, and he has an activity called the 6 Lives exercise. It is one of my favorites, and he has a website. If you just Google 6 Lives exercise, he gives you 6 paragraphs, and each one is a different life of a person who would tell you that they are successful. And then there's an activity where you can rank them 1 through 6, 1 being the one you would say is most successful, and then 6 is the least. And then you can submit it, and it kind of gives you an analysis of, what it says about like your values and your priorities. And what I love about this activity is it gives people just a holistic view of a successful life could look completely different. Like, it doesn't have to look like anyone else's. And it helps you pick out the things like, oh, that really resonates with me, or, oh, that doesn't resonate with me at all. And it helps give some direction and some clarity if you're not really sure where to start.
Yeah, and I love that you brought that point up again. I feel like sometimes we all want to do this because we feel like we need to, or we have to, or we have all these people's expectations, or people are going to judge us. And I think that's a struggle for many of us, just to go and live the life that we want to. Well, it's what are my neighbors going to think if I don't drive this car and I go and get this car? And, for me, like I drove a Lexus for a little bit and I knew I was going to quit my corporate gig and go start my own company. So I traded in my Lexus and I went and got a Honda Accord. And I was like, oh, and that's just like something like so materialistic. You know, I think that creates a lot of pressure and sometimes, I guess I'm going to use an example too for me. So Kaylee, who works with me now, she actually helps with co-producing the podcast. She worked for me and started dating someone that worked within our organization. When she started with me, I had all these hopes, dreams, and expectations of her, and then she just chose a different path. And at first I was like, oh, like I was kind of judgy. And then now I see her, what she's doing, and she's freelancing and she's traveling and she's like totally content in her element. And she's so powerful and she's so strong and she's so confident in that element, and that was probably scary for her because I had these expectations, her parents had these expectations. So I think owning who you are and who you want to be and how you want to live your life can be kind of scary and it requires some vulnerability. But at the end of the day, she's completely happy and doing everything that she likes. And I'm happy for her,
Yeah.
So I think there's definitely that, that fear of judgment and what people are going to think. And sometimes people don't do what they want to do because of that.
Absolutely. I think sometimes we really keep ourselves bound by other people's expectations and what they will think of us. And honestly, once we break free from that, the world opens up for us. Like it will open up for us once we decide to do what's really aligned with us, with our strengths and what we will really want. But it takes bravery because it is a risk. I think it's a risk because you're not sure what people will think. And then for me, a big part of the risk was, what if I take this risk and I'm wrong? Like, what if I take this risk and I tell people and they see me doing it and then I fail and then I have to face them like, yeah, you're right, I shouldn't have made this decision. And I think that's like a track that was playing in my head when I took that risk and I left corporate to really pursue speaking. And even more so when like after kind of doing my process and I got clear on my end goal, one of the pieces was I was like, okay, I want to be a full-time speaker. And I looked at speakers who were doing what I wanted to do. And I was like, oh, they all have a title. So I actually made the decision to go back to corporate at one point because I was like, I need a title and experience, in this lane that I'm speaking in. And it was a hard decision because I was like, what are people going to say? I have, I downsized. I haven't been in corporate for several years. I've really been pushing towards public speaking. What are they going to say? And what are they going to think now that I'm going back into corporate? And it was hard because I was definitely worried about that. I was like, they're going to think that I failed. They're going to think that I gave up. And I mean, in that moment, the only thing that kept me grounded was the fact that I had a clear vision and I knew why I was taking that step. And so I believed in it and it kind of gave me that confidence. But if I didn't have that clarity, I wouldn't have taken the risk and left my full-time job. I wouldn't have taken the risk to pivot back into corporate and I wouldn't have had, the success that I do now.
Yeah. Well, I'm so glad that you did take ownership and you decided to follow your path and get clarity because what you're doing is super powerful work as well.
Thank you.
All right. So I want to since we're talking about corporate, let's talk about the employer and then we'll talk about the employee. And sometimes they get intertwined. And if they do, that's great. So I want to talk about your work that you're doing with leaders and then planning their path. And I want you to kind of break that down to empower their teams and help with people that are struggling with employee engagement.
Yes. So it will do some crossover. So when I walk leaders through the PATH framework, so just to kind of give you what that acronym is, we start with picture your end vision. So picturing your vision and then affirming your beliefs, tailoring your routes and tackling challenges, and hone your habits. So that's the PATH framework, right? And so when I work with companies and company leaders, the goal is I start with them because I believe managers are the lifeline of any organization. Like your people leaders completely have so much effect on your employee experience, engagement, and retention. So I want to start with them and I want to be fair that, especially middle managers, they're getting pulled in both directions, right? They're getting pulled to, leadership priorities, and then they're getting pulled to, back and support their teams. So they have a lot going on. So I like to do this process with them, helping them get clarity on their end goal. What are their limiting beliefs? Are they struggling with imposter syndrome? What are some potential routes that they can take? And how can we hone their habits to get some things off their plate and make them feel empowered where they are. And then we say, how can you do that for your teams? How can you help empower them in the same way? Because I feel like when I first started, especially when I kind of shifted focus to engaging and retaining millennials, I started coaching millennials in the workplace. And it was great because we would have these coaching conversations and I felt like their mindset was completely shifted. They went from like frustrated to super excited about their job. They would have a plan of action. And then I would follow up with them like months later just to check in. And they'd be like, oh, I'm doing great. I'm starting a new job. And I was like, wait, that was not our plan. Like, what happened? And everything they said, it would always go back to their manager. Like, well, my manager didn't want to have one-on-ones with me, or my manager didn't understand, and I couldn't get stretch projects and all this stuff. But I found a position that really aligns with, what we talked about. And I was like, okay. And it was then that I realized that it would be more effective if I were to train managers to have these conversations, because what these conversations do is it builds trust, it builds engagement, it builds relationship. And from a manager standpoint, it helps you see how to motivate your team members. It helps you see what is their long-term goal and how can we make this a win-win while you're here. Because I think, over the years, it's gone down from people thinking, oh, I'm going to be with this company for the next 20, 30, 40 years. So I think we all just need to be honest about it and have these conversations to say, okay, where is it that you would like to be in 5 to 10 years? And how can we both maximize where we are now to one, make sure we're leaning into our jobs, we're getting the most out of it, and that you are on your path. I think managers having those conversations and empowering their team members in that way, it builds so much trust. It adds to engagement and productivity because they feel empowered where they are. And it's a really powerful process when the whole team is aligned and on board.
Yeah, 100%. I think that, I manage a team of 32 people and every personality is completely different.
Yep.
And for years, I talked about doing one-on-ones and I just never put it on my schedule. It wasn't a priority. And looking back, like, that should have been the priority because I would have got so much insight to how people were feeling, if they were not feeling validated, if they were really happy. And then I could have kind of leaned in on that and really focused, okay, why do they feel that way? Okay, how do I replicate that? Or if they were feeling like onboarding. So the onboard process has been just broken. So we would just onboard them, do the paperwork, put them in a studio, good luck, let me know if you have any questions. And a lot of people don't really feel confident enough to come and ask questions, right?
Mm-hmm.
They will silently struggle and then they'll get frustrated and then they're like, this just isn't right. So one of the things that we've been trying to do and implement is really key in on that onboard process to where people are successful. And we are having, just like a monthly manager meeting where it's like, I come in, well, it's really an owner meeting, come in and I sit for 30 minutes and anybody can come and have a meeting with me. They can ask questions, they can share ideas. And then I've also had one of my managers now meet monthly or bi-monthly with our teachers. Hey, this is what you're doing really great at. This is really what we appreciate. Is there anything that you need or anything you think we can enhance to enhance the experience? And so I'm finding we're getting some really great traction. We're getting some really good feedback and it's really boosting that culture as well. It requires time and it's so hard to block out the time for that, especially when everything seems to be going great, or I would say going good, not great. But the goal is to be great. So I totally agree with like everything that you're saying. And just this past year, we always have picked a word for the company and we've had our employees pick words for themselves. But this year, I really had them dive into what their why is. Why are you getting out of bed? Why are you coming to work? Why are you going to do with this money? And kind of lean into that so that they have a sense of buy-in, like, this isn't just a paycheck. This is a way to fuel their life. And so that's been a real great mindset shift within our company as well. And it's on a whiteboard in our break room where everybody sees everybody's word, everybody's why, and what's the one thing they want to accomplish this year. And hopefully by the end of the year, we'll be able to have everybody checking off that they accomplished that. We just had Q3, like a roundtable conversation of accountability and how are you doing with that? Is there anything we can do for you? And celebrating if they've taken some action steps as well. So, leadership and employee engagement can be super challenging. It can be fun, but it requires a lot.
It does. It requires time, especially if you have a large team. Like 32, that's a large team. And I think the biggest challenge I hear from managers is I do not have time for all of these one-on-ones. And it can be hard. And I think, what you explained that you're doing with your organization, I think is going to be so powerful because oftentimes, people don't get asked that, like their why. Why am I here? Why am I doing this? And it can be so powerful when they're asked that question. I think it fosters engagement. It helps with the culture. It helps with people's motivation level. It gives them some intrinsic motivation for them to understand, why am I doing this and why am I coming to work? It can be really powerful. And I think for what I found with people with like larger teams, when they're like, I have 30, 40, 50 direct reports, finding ways that maybe you could even do it in group settings or group meetings or, having dedicated group time if you're not able to do the one-on-ones, but like what you said you do, offering those office hours where you're like, I'm available for people to come in, even that, letting them know that here's the time, here's the open door can be really impactful.
Yeah, and sometimes I'll have like 6 people and sometimes it's just 2. So there's a
Hmm.
point of connection as well because we're in our 10th year and
Hmm.
I'm doing, I don't know if you've heard of the book Traction.
Yes.
So, we're definitely implementing EOS into the system.
Hmm.
So, I've taken who our studio manager was and I've moved her to, a membership director where it's client engagement, sales, experience, and really focusing on those teachers. And then we've hired an administrative person that's going to help with all the admin and the scheduling, all that stuff. And then we'll have like marketing and sales. So being very clear on who to go to as well and who handles those questions and inquiries has been really, really helpful too. But by the end of the year, I want to have all those positions filled where I am solely like CEO working on the visionary, where we have everybody in place to actually execute and take the company to another level. One of the things that we do for group conversations is we do coffee and conversation every single week. It's an hour long. And typically there's a topic and it's education based, or
Hmm.
it'll have to do with like a recent event. And it's basically a meeting of the minds where people can share experience, their struggles, their wins. And that has been really impactful. We've been doing that for about 2 or 3 years. So my membership director now leads that. Before we had different people leading it, but now she's really leading that so that we have more, not that we have control over it, but we can
Hmm.
keep it engaging and it can foster what we're working toward, like our critical number and things like that. So
Absolutely.
all the things contribute to the success of the company. So when you're talking about the vision, so having that at the forefront as well. But I would like for you to kind of share what the vision means to you, whether it's the company vision or what's the employee's vision, maybe how those are commingled as well.
I definitely think they commingle. I feel like for many years, we heard people telling organizations, make sure your employees are aware of and bought into the company vision and the company mission. And that is absolutely still important. But I think having that focus on, well, what's their personal mission? What's their personal vision? And how can we align either at the macro level or at the micro level? As a team, what are our individual visions and how can we tie our individual goals into our team and work vision can be very powerful. I think we sometimes forget about that personal piece. And, to what we talked about earlier with so many influences, employees right now have so many options. They have so many options of things that they can do for work, things that they can do as an entrepreneur. Like they have tons of options. So helping them understand and get clarity on their vision so then they can see how this fits into their path. Because when I work with, individual contributors, the biggest thing is I really don't know how this job fits into my long-term growth. I don't know how this fits into my long-term plan. And if they find themselves in a role where they're like, I have no idea what I want to be, or maybe I want to be an entrepreneur one day or in a different field, but this is the job I have right now and it pays my bills. It's easy for them to be disengaged. It's easy for them to be disconnected, and it will be easy for them to quiet quit or, fully quit. So I think giving them the opportunity to get clarity and explore and helping them kind of close that loop on, oh wait, I do have opportunity within this organization. I could grow in this organization. There are, whether it be benefits or tuition reimbursement or the opportunity to have a mentor or even like the projects that they work on, helping highlight that for them so they can see, okay, I am learning and this could play a pivotal role in where I'm going. I just have to see it that way. It can be really, really powerful. So I think organizations focusing not only on getting their buy-in for the company vision, but taking the time to help them get clarity on their personal vision and tying it back to what they're doing right now.
How are employers or employees creating those conversations?
Typically, it's in coaching conversations, like if they have the capacity for those one-on-ones, or it could be like group team building. Like I've done a few team workshops where I'll come in and I work with the team for a couple of hours, and it's like, okay, let's start with our personal visions and goals. And then let's align as a team. As a team, what is our vision? As a team, what does success look like for us? And let's see where the synergies are, and just opening up those conversations. And then from that kind of like group workshop dynamic, they're able to take that and say, okay, now for future one-on-ones, we kind of have a roadmap to on like where can we check in, where can we hold each other accountable to guide those conversations. So that's one of the solutions I've seen across some companies.
Okay, so I want to ask you a question. I want you to be really, really
Yes.
honest with me.
Okay.
So, as the CEO of the company, as the visionary, as the one that's like, we've got this, and I have a tendency of being very excited and like, we can do this, and a huge cheerleader. And then I'm like coming in with, okay, these are the goals, let's work on this together. And then it's about the accountability.
Mm-hmm.
And when the accountability comes into play, that can be really hard for some individuals, right? They're like, wait, I didn't do this, or, she's pushing too hard, or that's not possible, or here we go with another grand idea and all of that
Mm-hmm.
stuff. So for the leaders that are maybe similar to me, or maybe can identify with a couple things that I said,
Mm-hmm.
how do we not disengage our employees?
Absolutely. I would say, and it'll be different situation to situation, company to company, culture to culture. I would say if there are ways to help them have ownership in the goals, maybe it's, and again, not to say that they will set the goals, but inviting them into the conversation. Are there opportunities to say, what have you all seen? Are there some trends that you all have seen? Or let's do a posted activity, and if we have to think about what our goals are for the next calendar year, everybody write a post-it and put it on the board, and let's like kind of talk through inviting them into the process, inviting them into the goal setting process, even if they don't own the decision, helps to kind of foster a level of ownership that a lot of employees really crave when it comes to being engaged. I think sometimes they just want to feel a part of the process, and that different set of ownership helps them feel more excited about it, helps them feel more engaged, and it gives them the opportunity to maybe share some of those things up front. Like, okay, I think that goal is a good idea, but here are the challenges that I think might come up when it comes to achieving that goal. And again, that doesn't mean you won't keep that as a goal, but maybe you either have that in mind, or you can ask ahead of time, well, how can we avoid that? Or how can we tackle that up front? I always encourage leaders to lead with questions, to get that information out, to get that conversation going, so that it can, like I said, shift that level of ownership so they feel a part of the process. They can feel a part of the ecosystem. They feel like their voice is heard. And so then when it comes out like, okay, these are the goals, we're really excited about this, thank you all for your input, they have that level of like intrinsic excitement tied to it.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing that. I definitely think, like, I always want to say, oh, the buy-in, and so we're incorporating some of those things within some of our staff meetings and, giving them the voice. At the end of the day, they're the ones that are doing the work every single day and working with the clients, and they're seeing the struggles. So their voice is super, super important. But sometimes I find like they voice it, but then they don't want to actually make any changes to do anything to help fix it. It's just they want to
Yeah.
complain, or they just want to say their part and then move on because of whatever reasons. So anyways,
Yeah, no, I totally understand that. And I would definitely follow up any type of like, oh, maybe they're just venting or they have something maybe more negative to say. I would definitely follow up with that. Well, what would your solution be? Like, well, how would, if you were me, how would you handle this? What would your solution be? And if there are no answers, then you'll have to have a separate conversation.
yeah, for sure. Awesome. Well, I really love everything that you've said today. And I feel like as a leader, I think, being strategic and, following your path framework and really honing in on the habits too. And that's so hard to build healthy habits and to change the way of doing it, especially if you've had people in your organization that have been there and it's like, well, we've always done it this way. Well, yeah, that's great, but we want to change those habits and redirect. So I think all of that is super powerful. If there was something that you could leave the listeners with today, or something that you could say to them that would encourage them to take ownership or to get the clarity or to create their goals within those 5 different areas that you mentioned, what would be something that you would say to them?
I would say take the time, whether it be personal or professional, take the time and think about what does success look like for you, whether it be those 5 key areas of your life, or it's, you're thinking about your team or your company. What does success at the end of this year, 5 years, 10 years look like? Get really, really clear on that. Ask yourselves a number of questions like I mentioned, I have a download that I can provide to you all, but take that time, journal, think it through. If you're working with a team, invite them into the conversation, because when you all have an end goal, when you have that North Star, creating your roadmap there gets easier. Engaging people along the way gets easier. And on a personal level, your personal motivation to get to that thing will be a lot easier as, life happens and things come our way. That will kind of be your guiding, North Star that will keep you going. So I would encourage you to take the time to really think through that.
And I want to second that. I want to encourage all of you to complete that for sure. So, all right, Kendra, you've been amazing. You have definitely gave us some things to think about, some really great action items. If we want to connect with you, which I'm sure many listeners do, where can we find you? How can we get the download, your free gift that you had to offer?
Yes, absolutely. So you can visit my website, www.kendramack.com, or connect with me on social media on Instagram and TikTok. I am Kendra Mack is my handle, or on LinkedIn, and send me a private message on any of those platforms. If you send me a private message with Own It, I will send you my Own It mini manual download that will walk you through that initial process of getting clarity on your definition of a successful life.
I love it. Well, I'm ready to own it. Thank you so much, Kendra, for joining me. I will definitely be following you as well on social so that I can be inspired and continue to live in the element that I want to live in. I was just on a podcast a couple days ago, and I remember it wasn't last year. It was like 2 years ago. And I finally just said to my husband, I kind of feel the same way, but I was like, I am so content right now. Like, I feel like I have everything. And he's like, but wait a minute, we don't have this and we don't have all that. I'm like, I just feel like I'm in the element and I'm just content. And to be in a place where you just feel content is really kind of cool.
Yeah.
I was only able to be in that spot for a couple months before like some things had to change. And I literally went to dinner last night with my husband again. And I said, I feel like I'm just back there again. I'm so hopeful. I feel so fulfilled. I'm so grateful. And I feel like everything is going the way that I wanted it to go. And I feel like we're making some really great strides and like on a healthy path. And, getting to travel and the lifestyle and all that stuff just is, I don't know, I just feel really grateful. So I can understand what you're saying. And I hope all of our listeners can get to that point as well. I mean, obviously there's things I want to buy and places I want to go, but for the most part, like, I just feel really content, which is a really great feeling as well. So thank you for inspiring us and sharing in this conversation. I'm really grateful for you. Thank you all for listening as well. Kendra and I want to encourage you to give us a 5-star review or share this with 5 of your friends that you think could benefit from today's conversation. I think the information was super powerful. I think there's a lot of action items. I'm ready to own it. I'm sure you're ready to own it. So DM her so you can get that free download. And we're wishing you a fantastic afternoon, morning, or day, whatever time you're listening to this podcast. Thank you for tuning into the Stroke It podcast. I hope you were inspired. I hope you're willing and ready to take some action. I want to encourage you to consider 5 people that could benefit from today's podcast. Super simple to share this episode. You never know who could benefit from hearing this podcast and how you could inspire them to create the change in the life that they're wanting. Cheers, and thank you so much for tuning in. Also, consider giving a review.